a lot of this practice brings you, like I say, most people are not so aware of their bodies. Maybe athletes are because they have to pay attention. But most people in daily life are not. And this gives you a greater and greater awareness, such that eventually you can sense things before they begin to happen. Let's say you ran into somebody and they were sick, and you begin to feel, oh, but you don't have any symptom, but you feel something is not right. Your chi is sour. Something feels wrong. And then you can make a correction. You take herbs or something like that, and you don't get the problem like that. So it's a benchmark to begin to help heal the body and strengthen the body for the martial art, and then develop the consciousness. All three of these things happen really simultaneously.
Yes.
And it's where we choose to focus.
Live and rolling. Welcome. This is Benny Fergusson here, and today I'm talking with a very special guest, Mark Cohen, and all the way from Hawaii, and you're on the island of Maui, is that right?
Correct. Aloha to everybody.
Aloha, aloha. And so I've got Mark here today. He's been a very big inspiration for me, particularly through a lot of my physical development, and he's written probably one of my favorite books for life, not just physical practice, which is called Inside Zhang Zhuang, or Zhang Zhuang, or however we pronounce it. You might be able to correct me as well. And
that's close enough. You got it. Zhang Zhuang.
Yeah.
I don't speak Chinese very fluently myself. So.
Yes, tomato, so. So today, Mark and I will be having a conversation. This is part of our conversation series. If you've been watching these videos, where I get people that I really respect in the physical world, and in particular, what I'm looking to do is bring more awareness to the internal side of physical practice, and where that intersects with the mind and the body and even the spirit, and how that then flows out to give us a deeper experience of life, and so we can live more truthfully. So there's probably no better person that I could be speaking to right now about all of that sort of stuff. So maybe I'd just like to introduce you to everyone, Mark, and would love to hear a little bit about your background and how you came into all of the things that you're doing today, where you started out. Yeah.
Okay, very good. Okay, I first ran into standing meditation and Tai Chi, but especially standing meditation in about 1967 from a man named Mr. Lee in Victoria, British Columbia, Canada. I was going to university up there, just starting out, just barely out of my teens. And this gentleman was in his 80s at the time and had been a refugee from the Japanese in World War II. He had lived in the mountains and was supposedly a Taoist master. And he first introduced me to the standing exercise. And of course, as a young man at that time, it was hard to be patient long enough to get the benefits. But it made an impression, and so did this man, because he had abilities that were sometimes very hard to explain. I'll give you one example. We were walking in an alley in Chinatown. It's a very small Chinatown, or it was back in 1967 in Victoria. And he said, just a minute, I got to stop in here to the shop, and you go to the end of the alley and wait for me at the door there. Well, I went there and waited for him, and then expected him to walk toward me and come there, because there was no other way. But when I reached the door opened, and Mr. Lee was standing there. So I don't know how he got there, because he couldn't have gotten there by normal means. So he had a lot of respect in the Chinatown there at the time, and I think he was able to transfer energy to people, not just for healing, but just for life, and transfer, as I've learned to do, so that the student have a direct experience of this stuff. Because a lot of these things that we go on in these internal practices, it's hard to find words for, even to explain what to do, and then when things happen, to explain what has actually happened.
Yes.
So his language was not good in English, so most of it was done on another level, I would say. But then many years later, I ran into it again, standing meditation I'm speaking of here.
Yes.
I had working with the Huarang Do masters, and they were teaching special forces and the Marine, recon, people like that. And I worked with them, and they had meditation as the very first thing that they did. And it was a seated form, but it was the same type of thing that Mr. Lee had shown us, only done sitting. Anyway, we worked with that, and I achieved a black belt in Huarang Do there many years ago. But before that, I had studied with a man named Mr. Oshima, who was the senior disciple of Gishin Funakoshi, who was the founder of Shotokan Karate.
Yes.
And he had a studio in Long Beach and in LA. And in the Long Beach studio, there was a guy named Jim Kelly, who was one of the black belts there, but you know him from Enter the Dragon.
Yes.
Okay. Anyway, so this is going way back. And in those days, they didn't have a lot of colored belts or anything like that. In the Japanese system, they had the white belt, brown belt, and black belt. And, Jun-Ri had not invented pads yet. So when you sparred barehanded, and you had to protect yourself, and like that. So I learned in the days when it was done pretty realistically. So that gives you a whole sense of the fighting side of it. And of course, when you're younger, and also as you're developing your power, these things are important because it's a way to apply it, and a way to show it, and a way to practice it. As we get older, we perhaps want to think more of the internal practices for rejuvenating the body and developing the mind and spirit. But anyway, later I ran into a man who would come out here to Hawaii by the name of Mr. Fung Ha. He's out of Berkeley, California. His lineage is direct from Wang Chong Jai, the founder of the Yishuan or Da Chun Quan. Anyway, so I practiced that, and along with that, some more of the Taoist standing. And Taoist standing, they have many postures that are used, several hundred. Not that I know all of them, but these things provide things for specific organs or extra channels, psychic channels, various things that can be worked with to help both rejuvenate the body and to develop consciousness. And that's what I found different with Zhang Zhuang compared to any of the other internal arts, is that it began to work on the consciousness. Because you're not trying to move, it's often the case that when we move, we think we're doing it right, but then the teacher comes around and corrects us a little bit, and you realize, oh, it was completely something else. With standing, there's much less of that, because you have to confront yourself. And you can't kind of lie to yourself and tell yourself you're relaxed, when your body's shaking or your muscles are tight. So you have to learn to be honest with yourself and accept yourself right where you are. You might say the earth below, heaven above, and the human being in the middle. And so they call marriage of heaven and earth, some of the Chinese philosophy. But I found that because the teacher didn't come out here very often, he would teach me in the old way and show me like one thing.
Yes.
And then I would work on it for a year. And then he'd come back up and then show me something else. And it would be like that. But what happens with standing meditation, if you have enough of a background already in the internal arts or even in the external arts, you begin to open up these areas inside yourself which provide kind of quantum leaps, the ability to it's like this for me. I would be reading certain things in the classics, the Tai Chi classics, right? And they all sounded good and it made sense and all that stuff, but how to do it? You know, there it is in words, and here I am in my body. How do I get it across? And I found that by just doing the standing meditation every day. Now, in the old way, they stand for about an hour each time. And when you really want to get serious, you go longer than that. What I did for a period of 2 years was to stand 2 hours a day, 1 hour in the morning, 1 hour at the sunset or the evening, and do that. And this really seems to develop things in a, I don't know, you might say a fantastical or mystical way. Because the whole process, it's like if you think of the 8 core skills, right? Like soften and connect, open and close, stretch and compress, twist and release. These type of things. The idea of soften and connect is the whole modus operandi of the standing meditation. The idea by relaxing enough, we are able to feel a joining. Now, the muscles are always going to be separate. They've got the pectoralis and the latissimus and all these different things. But one begins to gain a sense of unity, a feeling of unity, as if they are joined. And of course, the Chinese would say they're joined with the qi, with the life force energy. They become one piece. And so the goal of all of these practices, of the internal practices, is to unify the body to the state where we're like kind of one single-celled animal moving, one part move, all part move type of a thing. And when this first happens inside the body in Zhang Zhuang, it's quite different because you're standing there relaxed in a posture, or your arm down in Wuji posture, or wherever your posture is taking you, but you're simply breathing and relaxing, and yet things are happening inside.
Yes.
Okay? The biggest thing that I can point out for most people is to get that sense of their center and their dantian. And I've been doing some reading here recently, an old book called Taoist Yoga, which is written by a man born in 1896, Charles Look. It's out there, it's a famous book. But I hadn't read it in many years, and I began to reread it again, and I found that much of the things that they talk about as alchemy begin to happen spontaneously to the practicer of standing meditation if they just show up every day. And some days are harder than others, and some days you feel uncomfortable. But eventually you're able to get a certain mindset, you might say. And it's actually really releasing your mind.
Yes.
And kind of going into pure feeling, as I talk about in the book. And that's where things really begin to happen. Because when we're not using our conscious mind, elements of the subconscious mind begin to surface. And we're able to take advantage of those. So we really are training that. And so with enough training, what happens is the nerves and the nerve sheaths actually change. And so that we don't react in the same way as other people do. Now, of course, if one is in a survival situation, there's going to be adrenaline, there's going to be fear. But what happens is different. For most people, when that occurs, the energy rises into your throat and your chest. And everything, a lot of lactic acid come out, and you can't move good. With enough training, what happens is the qi sinks.
Yes.
And what happens if you feel very, very connected to the ground, yet spring-like, you can move in any direction instantly. And the upper body feels like it has no weight.
Yes.
It's like it could move through a vacuum instantly. So you have the ability of a certain kind of speed that develops from this. And I remember when I was studying with the Wadong Do masters, Grandmaster Lee's brother would do a break where they would have pieces of silk, and they'd have the bricks on the silk, and he would knife chop and break the bricks without breaking the silk.
Yes.
And I asked him, how do you do that? He says, I create a vacuum. And then when in a vacuum, there's no resistance to the movement, so your speed can be a lot more than it physically appears.
Yes.
Okay, so this is one experience that I found very interesting. But all this occurs in the standing meditation as well.
Yes.
Go ahead, please.
Yeah, yeah. There's such wonderful things that you've mentioned there, and it's really wonderful to hear a lot of your background and how it's come into all the things that you're talking about. So and there's so many things that I think people might like to explore further. In particular, for me, it was so useful to be able to kinesthetically feel that first stage of softening and connecting into the body. And what would you say, and a lot of my understandings through that process have been about being able to feel what's going on in the fascia system. And for me, that's been a really big, just a physical kind of reference to how the body's unified, because the way I see the fascia system is it's that one thing that connects the whole body, kind of like the skin, but interweaving on the inside. So for someone that's really, let's say there's a lot of the rising going on, they're in their head, thoughts going on all the time, they're having trouble to get into their body, what would you say is the first, like a good place for them to start to have that experience?
Especially if a house should have the monkey mind.
Yeah.
Right, where we're around to here, to there, to there. The first thing you have to tell yourself is that you're shopping or whatever you need to do, it'll still be there in a few minutes when you finish your session. It'll still be there. You tell your conscious mind, you have to kind of like beat it with a stick in a very gentle way.
Yes.
But then you have to tell yourself that you're going to take your attention and just begin to breathe. We're going to make the breath even. 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out, or 10, or whatever, or 3, whatever your length is. And this can change as we go on in time. And we want to allow that. And in the very beginning of the meditation, in the old way, they would say, close your eyes, make a blackboard over here, and put down number 1 after 1 in and out breath, and number 2 after that, etc. So you could begin by counting your breaths. This is a very preliminary beginning manner.
Yes.
But the idea is for someone with no experience, this begins to even out the breath. And as the breath begins to even out, you will notice that the thought patterns begin to change.
Yes.
They begin to slow down, and they begin to become a little less invasive if things have been like closing in on you thought-wise.
Yes.
So you eventually want to be able to, the thoughts don't actually go away, but our conscious awareness of them does. So the thoughts eventually, we were able to kind of, in a sense, keep them at a peripheral area here, but while our consciousness is focused more deeply inside ourselves. And so we have the effect that the thought patterns disappear.
Yes.
Now, with enough work on the subconscious, I have to say this, over years and years and years, I bet you're resolving a lot of issues that come up, because that's one thing that will happen in standing meditation. Certain emotions may come out of the blue, or certain feelings, uncomfortable, odd, weird, or very, very pleasant. And all these things are part of the process. And one has to be able to be like the person on a riverbank. And let's say you're going down the Nile, the barges are going down the Nile, nice and slow. Eventually your thoughts are like that. Or these are already maybe an experience, an emotional experience.
Yes.
You do not try to fight them, but you do not hold on to them. You let them pass through you and move on.
Yes.
Eventually, you're able to transfer most of your awareness into your sense of feeling, what I call feeling awareness. And this feeling awareness is our road deeper and deeper inside the body. And you're talking about the fascial layer, and of course we have the skin and the muscles above that. Well, the muscles are roughly in the same area of the fascia.
Yes.
But then as you become more sensitive, of course, as you have, then you become aware of the places where the muscles attach to the bone, and then the tendons and ligaments.
Yes.
That includes in the spine. And then later, you can become aware of these very, very deep muscles inside the body, like the ones lining the inside of the spine, for instance. But you go beyond that. Eventually you can begin to sense, although albeit very subtly at first, the actual organs themselves.
Yes.
And then beyond that, it's said that with enough practice, you're supposed to be able to sense the glands. And of course, this is now becoming alchemy, because a lot of this stuff in the Taoist practices is bringing the energy through the brain in and out like that. And but the idea that this transformational process, energetically and physically, so you have a couple of, and then you could say mentally too. So physical process, the muscles become more and more relaxed, begin to feel connecting, usually the upper body first, then usually the lower body, and then the midriff, usually the chi belt area, and the waist is usually the last to join in to become one big piece. So eventually when you relax your body in a standing position, everything drops out under your feet.
Yes.
And your feet are the benchmark. Because when you first start this exercise, then you're going to feel some places in the feet have a lot of pressure, some don't have so much. Ideally, we want everything to be relatively equal.
Yes.
And when that happens, you begin to get this feeling of suction or joining with the earth or the ground or whatever you're standing on, whatever that is. And then that's where one's idea of the root begins to occur. And it's like, I've been watching the Olympics, right? And the gymnasts, when they do the ball, and if they can do all these fancy things in the air and then land, and then they call stick it, right?
Yes.
They mean like a suction almost when they do a perfect one. It's just like their feet are there, they're glued to the ground. And this is actually their being able to put a root down and make it work.
Yes.
Not so easy, or all these twists and turns in the air. But for us as normal folks, then the idea of just standing still and being able to relax our energy such that we feel it go down and relatively equally in all the places of the feet. Usually what develops with that part of it is that the first half of the foot, the front half, the plantar arch, and then the Yung Chuan bubbling well point, and then all the toes begin to have a more control first, because as human beings we are always kind of moving forward, so our awareness is pretty much in the front of our body.
Yes.
And it takes some time to begin to become aware of the back part, which is there all along and been coming along for the ride, unbeknownst to us for a long time. But it's that way. And I'm going to digress for a second, because that's the time when we do walking exercise, whether you do the Bagua sliding step or the Tai Chi heel to toe.
Yes.
The important thing is not the forward motion so much, that's important too, but to be able to walk backwards.
Yes.
Because the walk backwards begins to create the opposite effect physically of what happens when we walk forward. When we walk forward, let's say, and I'm exaggerating, my chest sticks out and my back kind of folds inside. But when we walk backwards, we round the back outward almost like a barrel.
Yes.
Which is eventually what we want to feel like when we're standing. It's all this big round thing. And you have sensations of cylindrical energy before usually the spherical energy occurs.
Yes.
But anyway, so I digress there.
No, that's great. Yeah. So it's there's so many wonderful gems in there, and I think for most people who are particularly looking to heal their body, whether it's of injuries and or even just improve performance, like you were saying with more dynamic movement pursuits like gymnastics and all that sort of thing, we first need to really address this to be able to start to sink the consciousness into and be able to feel the body at progressively deeper levels. And from that,
right, deeper levels. Yeah. Okay, so that reminds me. So we have the muscles, we have the skin. Actually, we have the etheric body on the outside. The whatever, when you run your hand over it, you feel like we call chicken skin in Hawaii. They call goosebumps in a lot of places.
Yes.
You can feel a sensation like that. That's the exterior layer, the skin, the different layers of skin, and then the muscles. And usually there's in a lot of places in the body, there's 3 layers of muscles. In most other places too.
Yes.
And you're getting down into the tendon, ligament, and from there, you're going into the element of the bone, and eventually inside the bone to the marrow. Okay? Inside the bone to the marrow is akin to going through the organs and accessing the glands. The nice thing about when you access the glands is that when you can trigger one, all of them respond. They're all linked. Science has showed that when you change something in the pituitary gland, the thymus or the thyroid or the adrenal will respond as well.
Yes.
So you're to make contact with these deeper areas. Of course, this takes many years, but just for healing the body, let's say you had a car accident or this or that, then holding these postures begins to help return the body to its original form, in a sense, before the accident occurred. Often when an accident occurs, the muscles and the way, let's say we got hit in the hip or something like that. Actually, I'm treating a couple people like that.
Yes.
And what happens is their whole body gets off, and then the nerves, instead of firing in the normal way to take a normal step, they fire irregularly to avoid the injured area. And so eventually you create a new normal, which is this, you might say, a limp, but it feels natural to the person. It's like what they remember. So doing this standing exercise begins to remind the body to return to this original matrix that it had before the injury. And it does this reminding by being able to send energy there. In the sense, you'll often maybe feel it as warmth or tingling. The result of it, though, is that you'll feel a sense of space develop in the wounded area, the injured area, and it'll feel less sore, and they'll seem to be a little more stretched. Now, oftentimes the stretch, let's say I'm pointing to my back over here or something like that, you can, if it's real bad, if you take a too big a breath, it's going to be sore. So you start with smaller breath, but then gradually as you relax, as you soften and things begin to connect, the breath deepens. And we can talk about the breath because for most people, especially in the West, when you say take a deep breath, it's take a breath, okay? But in the way that we're working, we want a long, slow, slender breath,
Yes.
such that we are actually breathing slightly behind the abdominal wall, so that the breath eventually, now physically, of course, what? The breath could go to the bottom of the lungs, about here, that's about it, right? And then, but energetically, and you feel this very, very concretely, as you know,
Yes.
that all of a sudden this energy can just go right through things and connect. You begin to connect. And so the idea of joining things and feeling greater space in the body is one of the amazing benefits of the standing exercise. Because when things are, let's say the simple thing here is you injure your arm. If you injure your shoulder, it gets pushed up like this. It feels like it's like that.
Yes.
And so as it relaxes and lengthens, the pain goes away, flexibility returns, and things like that. And the idea here of concentrating in our center comes into a paramount point of view now, because the body knows how to heal itself, and the body wants to heal itself. My acupuncture mentor, late Dr. Wan, always told me the body wants to heal itself. And so it will try. So in our case, we may feel certain things, that here's the problem, okay, it's right here. But the body may know that there's something else, somewhere else, that's partially triggering that. And so by us concentrating in our dantian, low dantian area, for instance, or the center, we are drawing on the body's innate wisdom to be able to send the energy and sensation wherever it needs to go.
Yes.
Without our, so a lot of it is, I mean, it's odd, because you know, you go day after day, year after year, a couple times a day, 3 times a day, once a day, whatever it is, with your practice. And eventually, I got a cat here that he's a big fella here. He's going to make an appearance in Australia. He's a real big boy.
Beautiful.
He's a ragdoll. He's like about 20 pounds.
Animals have been some of my biggest inspirations with all of the practices that I do, and
well, they say a lot of that. You know, if you study the cat, you'll have a really good idea about Tai Chi.
Yes.
You know, both in the stepping, but also in their ability to have explosive power.
Yeah, they like compress and expand like instantaneously, and
yes, their ability to do that, and that makes them very good fighters.
Yes.
Because the ability to compress or draw in a person's energy and then instantly give it back in real time is, the cats are faster than humans.
Yeah.
They're so fast.
Super quick.
But we can learn to become even faster than we think we can.
Yes.
Through this training. And what's so odd about it is that by becoming more still and more relaxed, we're actually able to move faster and more under our own control.
Yes. There's a couple of points that you brought up, which I think are probably worth mentioning. In particular, when someone, like the normal feeling, I suppose because we're living in our body all the time, we can get accustomed to this experience. And I think it's very useful for people to know that are watching. A lot of the time we can think, oh, I can stand because I do it all the time. I can walk, but it's sometimes akin to, well, you can drive a car with a flat tire as well, but but it doesn't necessarily mean it's performing at its best. And in particular, I liked what you said about sinking the awareness really into the physical or energetic center point in the body, and then allowing the body to put the consciousness, put the energy, put the circulation to where it naturally needs to go. Because a lot of the time I observe that we feel the pain and then we go into reaction. Oh, I need to go to this. And it's always the intellect chasing what we perceive to be the signal of the body, but it may not necessarily be accurate. And
well, you're describing it two different. This is really good as you brought this up, because this is often what happened in the standing. We get in a position. I'm using this posture here like this because many people recognize it, but you could use any posture. And you get into that position, and then you feel, okay, oh, my hip is a little odd. Oh, I'll change that. Oh, here, my shoulder's odd. I'm going to change that. I'm going to change that. And my back is injured. Back and forth, so you find yourself ping pong all over the place, feeling your body. That's one way to do it.
Yeah.
Okay, but the other way to do it is to anchor our focus in the Dantian region.
Yes.
And before we're able to do that, all of a sudden, what we have, what I describe in the book as a sense of peripheral feeling awareness begins to take over.
Yes.
And that, it's just like using your
peripheral vision. Yes.
Exactly. You're looking straight ahead, but you're aware of these other things. And so this happens with feeling, too. Yes. We keep a lot of our feeling there, but then that feeling becomes kind of almost amorphous and empty, and we begin to become aware more of the extremities of the body in relation to this.
Yes.
So that eventually we feel each piece. And in the book, I talk about hardwiring, connecting various opening and closing movements, or this or that, the wrist to the dantian, the elbows, etc. We go through the whole body. And really, this is what you're trying to do with Tai Chi. And, you can see by that most people that are due to Tai Chi, if they haven't had individual instruction, then oftentimes things are not connected completely.
Yes.
Between the extremities and their center,
Yes.
And like that. Okay.
And there's so many things that I'd love to dive into, and I think maybe we could set up another conversation as well. And but I'd love to hear just a little bit about more about the transformation process. We've dived into that a little bit. So someone starts, they'll notice things. Things will come up. They may even notice, and I think there was, I'm pretty sure you mentioned this in the book about the analogy of the rocks and the water. And as the water settles, as the stillness in the body settles, we start to notice things come up.
Right.
And
right. Well, this also has to do with we should discuss the 3 circles of awareness that's in the book too.
Yes.
And that is, the first circle of awareness is what I can feel and what I can sense, and it's all around me. I can sense this and sense that and sense the air and everything. Then there's parts of the body that are a little deeper from the surface, you might say. And there's places where we can sort of sense this. This is more peripheral awareness. And we can sense certain things, but not quite as if they're focused like they are in the physical. We might say our first circle is almost like a magnifying glass, whatever we look at.
Yes.
Or what we look at inside is going to get a big picture. Okay, and then the peripheral awareness is more, I would say, less magnified. But we're aware of it. And don't forget, this is having to do with our subconscious now, because the subconscious is handling the management of the blood flow, of the heartbeat, of the breathing and all these mechanisms that are going on in the body are related to that.
Yes.
And we're not aware of them. We're not aware of them unless we're a yogi or something, and you can stop your breath and make your heartbeat go a little slow. But it can be done. And so that just tells you that they were able to access that part of their subconscious, which is in control of that.
Yes.
So we begin to touch on the subconscious and the peripheral awareness. And then we have things, the big circle, beyond what we can feel at this moment. And what happens in this transformational process is the things that are on the peripheral, the second circle, move inward and become magnified. So like, let's say we had a big sore here, but we just had a little sore over here. And as this one goes away, all of a sudden we focus here, and then it becomes big. It seems like, oh, that's really there.
Yes.
And you have to become aware that the pain level or whatever it is probably hasn't changed. But what has changed is your focus upon it.
Yes.
And pain is one of the ways that the body is telling us consciously, do something about this. It's not right.
Yes.
Okay? I mean, because what happens normally in terms of the cellular systems and the brain is that when the cellular systems are in need of help, they send a message to the brain, micro mini voltage frequencies, and the brain responds with a command for a chemical reaction generally, and that usually takes care of business. What happens over time is the cellular communication breaks down.
Yes.
Between either the system can't communicate with the brain over the real long period, over a short period, it gets to the brain, but the message from the brain doesn't get back. This is one of the reasons why things don't get better by themselves, but they do when we're little children.
Yes.
See, because the cellular communication is uninterrupted. But as we get older, it becomes more difficult to achieve this. So we achieved all of this and enhance it by doing this standing, by doing this becoming still, accepting ourselves exactly where we are, and learning to develop relaxation. It may require moving the body slightly. It may require a change in the state of mind of letting go. That's the biggest thing. To me, the art of standing meditation is also the art of relaxation, the ability to say, what is real relaxation, and is there a limit to it? And we know that the closest limit you come, basically you're dead. You know it really slow. Okay, but shy of that, there is a huge area of this sense of relaxation, and now we go into the theory of Chinese medicine where they say the qi flows best through relaxed muscles. So the energy flows best through being relaxed.
Yes.
And that tension can create blockages, kind of like a dam. Above the dam, things back up. Below the dam, things can't get through.
Yes.
So that's why, for instance, let's say if you probably have a tennis elbow or something here, then we talk about in the book the station method. We work on the shoulder to relax and open up. And then we relax through the elbow and then finally down to the forearm or the hand.
Yes.
And we do all that. So this ability to, the greatest thing it does is give you a way greater and deeper awareness of your body.
Yes.
And eventually you get to the point, at least for periods of time during this exercise, that you would do what the Buddhists would call enter into the void. And you know you've done this because, let's say you started and you looked at your watch and it's whatever time it is at the beginning, and then you figure some time's gone by and you look again, and instead of being only 10 minutes, it's 40 minutes. Well, what happened to all that time in between?
Yes.
They say that you enter the void, but the void is a bit of a misnomer. The Taoists in alchemy call it that there's a false void, which just seems to be empty. But the void that they're speaking of is the void which is not empty, which doesn't make any sense in logical.
Try and grab onto it.
But when you experience this, you come into a state where things feel, like I say, suspended almost in thought and feeling. And you're able to simply experience it directly. It's like direct experience. It kind of goes beyond the physical itself, and you begin to feel these energies move. And then later, this is part of the thing. You can teach the energy to move around you in a circle or this or that in the various ways that you do. But what is so amazing is that you don't have, because a lot of these systems are very complicated. You got to do this and then do that, and well, it's like doing this, rub your chest, and but it can be done, and it is effective. And the things that, like I said, I was reading that this is the same way it's been taught for 76 generations. So
yes,
obviously, if it didn't work, it would have been discarded a long time ago. But it's complicated. But by a person just doing the standing meditation and working with that center, their Lodan Tien, or even the navel area, as in Taoism often they do, but they use both, you are able to go beyond what the logical mind and get into elements of the subconscious mind. We're getting a real blowout here. Then kind of you get these quantum leaps where, as I was describing something in the book, and then after a particular stand, all of a sudden I could do something, and I knew what it was, and I could emulate it. So I could grab a student or something and try.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Most of my students are family, like this and that, so it was easy. But and then lo and behold, it worked. Again, you work on refining it. What did I do? What you try to remember these things, but you're going to get at a certain point these real quantum leaps. And if it's martial ability, then you'll feel certain things, and boom, you can explode. Or do this, or later you can do things even more. You begin to take control of the person's energy field beside the physical body.
Yes.
And anyway, that's getting into a whole other discussion
yes.
with push hands and this type of thing. But like I say, the most amazing thing for me was the standing, because I had injured myself pretty bad teaching millions. So I had gone through everything and I had learned lineage, Tai Chi, and this and that. But it's only when I returned to the standing and took it up, completely seriously, that things really began to heal on the level to where, I mean, I don't go around trying to bench press 400 pounds. I would probably tear it out. Besides that, my arm wouldn't lift it anyway. But, so that's the idea. I would just let it go, and it would become that.
Yes.
It would just become something else. And like I say, letting your attention be there, this alchemy, this kind of chemistry that begins to go on, that we can work with consciously, happens automatically, I want to say, with enough time and patience, with enough gung fu,
yes.
perseverance and effort. With enough of that, certain changes begin to occur spontaneously.
Yes.
And one of those is that you feel really, really good. And that's one of the physical things, because as tremendous amounts of energy begin to course through the body, certain blockages are blown out, and certain things that we didn't have enough energy and blood coming to them now have more, and stuff like that.
Yes.
You begin to develop this. And then the stand kind of takes over your life, because you'll find yourself standing at a market and you see everybody else fidgeting, waiting in line, or at the bank, or waiting in line over the teller. And you find yourself, oh, I just need to just sit a little bit, and all of a sudden I have a little more comfort. And there's ways to do that where you don't look like you're some kind of freak in the middle of the line.
Yes.
And in fact, those ways, here, I'll show you. In those ways, it's like, I think this is about right for seeing it all.
Yeah.
You do just like to be standing like this, and the weight's more on one foot than the other. This is actually pretty light. You see. And you can just stand there, or you can stand like this, and small. And there it is, and you're relaxed, and you're able to do this. And what happens eventually, through enough practice, is that the body begins to do this spontaneously, even when you're not thinking about it.
Yes.
You'll find yourself making an adjustment, not even thinking, oh, just the body wants to do that, right? It wants to get into that place. And so that's the benefit of this. I believe that I'm not wrong in saying that this is kind of the high road, and it is also the shorter path to a lot of these things.
Yes.
Because it combines the physicality of standing and having to maintain structure to some degree, meaning that you don't fall down.
Yes.
Right? Because if we stand up and relax completely, we collapse, we fall
Turn
down.
into a pile of bones.
Yeah. Then we get into the idea that there has to be, we have to surrender to gravity. That's the first step, or they say to the heavenly energy, but we could talk about it scientifically as gravity, and letting it surrender. And then eventually this earth energy, which kind of supports us on every step, and then when we're standing, we begin to feel that, and that begins to lift the body up. And so certain places will relax. Everything needs to relax downward, and then certain places that need to open further will get higher up and will begin to lift. And eventually, the balance between the sinking and the rising energy become equal. And then you're able to stand a long time.
Yes.
Because it doesn't feel like you weigh much. It's not like it's so heavy pressure anymore.
Yes, I definitely know what you mean with that. And yeah, I think it's there's once again so many things. It's like we're creating a different way of interacting with the body each and every moment, and being able to be better at rebalancing amidst the forces of gravity all the time, and then having such awareness within the body, so then it can self-correct or self-adjust or allow pathways to open. You know, just in everyday, it's. I think the thing that I love that you're saying is not the practice isn't the benefit isn't just in the practice. It creates a bridge that starts to shift into other facets of your life.
Well, this is the key, and eventually, you know, eventually the central channel opens and the energy goes into the brain. Yuan goes into the brain, and when that happens, my teacher once asked me, because I was playing music, I played with a lot of famous people many years ago, and he said, "Well, how does it affect your playing?" I said, "Well, my rhythm is really more accurate. Not that it was ever not accurate, but it just became almost automatically easy." Yes. And the way he described it, he said, when a chi gets in your brain, you just get smarter. In other words, certain awarenesses open up. And you're beginning to trigger more. And science is studying this, right? I mean, that's why a lot of times the people that play the concert piano, they live into old age and have a good, pretty good health for a long time, because they've actually had to create new pathways in their brain that most average people don't use, with all these subtle things that they're having to do.
Yes.
And so this is something that occurs also through standing meditation, and then of course through Tai Chi and Bagua, whatever. All these different internal Yishuan. Eventually it comes down to the same thing. Our bodies, like it was said, you know, your body can, you have 2 arm and 2 leg, and it can only move in so many directions. You know, if we had other limbs, there'd be a new way of fighting, but there's not.
Yes.
So eventually it becomes to the same thing. One teacher once told me that all those disciplines that we just talked about, he said, at the highest level you cannot tell what they are. You cannot tell this style from that. He says just one level down, still very, very high, they're very clear.
Yes.
It's different. So eventually you go beyond the martial art part of it, and you're working with pure consciousness.
Yes.
That's where you begin to develop awareness that is, shall we say, supra, S-U-P-R-A, supra-sensory.
Yes.
Beyond our normal senses. And yet it feels as real as when we touch something, or something, you know, touches us.
Yes. Yes. And would you?
That's where it can go.
And would you say that this is something that is it's innate in the human body and something that we've forgotten over time?
Yes, absolutely. It's all these, the potentialities, you know, because we have a potential energy and kinetic energy.
Yes.
Right, the two kind of energy. The kinetic energy is a movement. Potential energy is like a sprinter at the blocks. They're ready.
Yes.
But it's all potential. They're not moving, and then all of a sudden it moves. So this potential energy can be tapped into. And in a simple way, how it works is, first, with the standing, it heals your body. Then as your body gets stronger, if you want a martial art, then you can have that. But then, eventually, whether you do that or whether you don't, or if you're older like I am, then at a certain point, you do a little less of this and a little more in here. And you begin to develop what they call Zen or spirit aspects.
Yes.
Of practices.
Yes. Amazing.
Okay.
There you go. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mark. Well, there's what I would say is I think maybe that might invoke and inspire lots of questions from people. So what I might if you do have a question, please send them along to me, and maybe in a future date, if you're open to it, we can start to address some of those questions specifically.
Right, that would be great. If people have questions, then we can answer specific things.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. And so for people that are watching, Mark, how can they get in touch with all of the wonderful things that you're doing out in the world?
Okay, well, they can reach me through the website InsideZhangZhuang.com. So
Awesome.
the word inside, and then ZHAN, and then the next one ZHUANG.com. InsideZhangZhuang.com, and there's a contact form in there, and there's also some free videos of where I go through the whole body and show bit by bit what you want to relax, what you want to become aware of. Here's one last thing I would love to say.
Yeah.
Everybody teaches put here your attention at Dantian. What? You also put attention at the original cavity of spirit, right? Right here.
Yes.
Between the eyebrow, behind the bone, between the eye. And the eye connect you back to the optic nerve, looking that way. You can hold your attention there. And eventually, as that opens up, you can internally look down at the Dantian, as if your eyes was like going down.
And would you call that developing the inner sight?
The inner what?
The inner sight, or inner vision?
Yes. Well, it just begins to happen.
Yes.
But yes, that begins to develop. And first, you begin to be aware of these elements inside your own body, and then later, you can go to other areas beyond the body and the earth.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Mark, for sharing your journey today with us. And and like I said, let's just arrange another time, and we'll get some specific questions for people that have been implementing these things. And I highly recommend, if you are into learning more about all the stuff that we've been talking about, that you go grab Mark's book. It's one of the things that I recommend to all of my students, Inside Zhang Zhuang, and it's an amazing book. And so thank you so much for putting that out in the world. It's really has the potential to help a lot of people. So from me and all of the people that it's helping, thank you, Mark. And
this make my heart glad, Benny, because that was the whole point of doing this, is to help people, with this.
Yeah, no, you've done that in spades. And well, I look forward to chatting with you again, and it's been a real honor, man. Thank you.
Well, as you say, cheers.
Cheers.
Aloha.